Hello, Cosplay World. We're back with the 5th part in a 6-part series. If you're looking for the series in its entirety, we'll have that at finalcosplaycore.com in the link in description. And we'll have pictures and things like that as well. Also, thank you for support and all those good things too. Alright, this time around we are done with the, I believe, all the torso bits. So the chest armor and the tabard are done. And this time around we're going to be making these shoulders. These gigantic spiky pauldrons that we are going to be wearing. So the base for this I'm going to be doing in PVC foam sheeting because it's a nice semi-flexible rigid material. I don't know, maybe if you got enough EVA foam you could totally do that. You'd have to shape it and put a lot of bulk into it, but for me, because I can combine materials reasonably easily, I'm going to forego that and combine my wonderful plastic cat roar! Worst cat ever. Combine my materials and use it to support the piece. It's not going to be super supportive like, say, MDF, but it will absolutely hold a shape when you heat it up, and that's nice for conforming to our shoulders. I know a lot of EVA foam people have a problem with cavities in their shoulder pauldrons, or creating stable supports for them as well, especially when they get gigantic like this. So the idea here is to get a nice strong piece of material that's also light. So awesome. That piece there I'm working with, that's going to be the back support. That's going to allow us to kind of keep these shoulder pieces steady. Now, these spikes are quite large and we do not want them to be heavy. So the solution here is, look at that! XPS foam, insulation foam, pink foam. Yes, we're going to be carving these large spikes, these ashen carapaces, out of this insulation foam. And we're going to have, the bigger ones are extra thick, so they're like 4 inches thick. Imagine doing that out of, say, paper mache or EVA foam or something like that. It would be quite a thing to try and work with those materials. With this, we simply carve them out and then add the detailing over the surface. And because it has a rough ash kind of texture, we really don't even need to seal them or change the surface texture with them. As long as you don't use something like spray paint, it will be totally fine there. I believe this is me making the other shoulder support for this as well. Now, one thing I will recommend is putting a liner in underneath so you're not just sitting on plastic. So you have a little bit of cushioning for supports and comfort. It's just a comfort thing, which is something that is pretty good with EVA foam. EVA foam is generally just a very comfortable armor to be in. It's floppy in some cases for me. So yeah, here you see the apparatus in which this piece is finished in. So XPS foam is a very soft material, and so you do not need especially hardcore tools to work with it. I have a saw here to kind of get the general shape, but I'm going to come in with just a rasp to begin carving and shaping the overall piece. And unfortunately I'm not on camera because it's a gigantic piece and I'm wrestling with it. Basically, here we go. I'm gonna try and get on camera. There we go. Yes, I realize that I need to be there. So I'm gonna try and follow the curvature of the shoulder pieces. That's why I have them in frame. I'm kind of like picking up and fitting them together to make sure that they are supported. I want them to line up as best I can because I'm going to need them to not have space in them. That being said, I'm going to need to mount them on somehow. And the trick here is I'm going to be using shish kebab skewers and big old gigantic long screws. I'm going to use big 3-inch screws. Now the point of this is that the long screws will pierce into the foam and act as like pegs or supports. They won't necessarily grip it because the threading on the screws will kind of rip through the foam fairly easily. But if we point the screws in different directions along the arch, just the tension of the screws pointing different directions will hold it in place. Okay, so we have been sculpting this foam for a good long time. Well, not really. A good long time in the duration of this video. But as you can see, I'm just working with a rasp and I'm carving all of this out very quickly. So all these 6 spikes are done inside of, I don't know, 2 hours. 2 hours of work. Pretty quick work if you ask me. One thing you will need to worry about is that pink dust there on my work surface. You do not want that in your lungs. That is bad for your lungs. So wear a mask, a respirator mask. That is a thing. If you've not heard, please by all means use. I know we all feel immortal when we were 20, but I straight up had a long-term cough because of the use of this, and I wasn't wearing a mask. It lasted a year before I stopped coughing. Not really. It was just something I had. I had a cough every once in a while. So definitely the result of this. I don't have long-term effects. I'm old. I'm super old. So yeah, trust me. I felt that way when I was young. So we have 6 spikes total here. The smaller ones are going to be towards the ends with the bigger ones towards the head. We're going to be mounting this in place again with the screws, and a lot of this is going to be done with the foam. Now, I don't expect them to be perfectly aligned. We're going to need some kind of filler in there so that whenever I do mess up, it will hold into place. Yeah, here we go. There's what the final product looks like. Typically, I would sand these much nicer, but because I want this kind of rough texture, I'm leaving them the way they are. We might add a little bit of coating just to give it a little bit of hardness, a little bit of a bit rigidity, but otherwise this is fine. And there we go. This is a hardboard or foam board caulk. This is a glue that's used to fill in gaps. It's pretty expensive as far as caulk is concerned, but considering how few glues actually work with XPS foam, it's well worth it. There's not a lot of good options, especially as fillers are concerned. Now you may be tempted to do something like create a filler of white glue or PVA glue and your leftover foam bits, but it's not going to be nearly as strong as this this formula developed by people to make houses. So yeah. As you can see, those tissue obscures I mentioned earlier are going to go into the tips of the spikes. This is basically a spine, a reinforcement to keep them from snapping off. As you might imagine, foam, not exactly the most durable material, so we want to protect it from damage. And there are our screws. I believe I did leave these to cure, and I did one off camera, one on camera, so that I could show you both at the same time. You definitely leave this to cure overnight so that it's not loose and could peel off while you're trying to add these screws. And as you can see, they are quite long, and they're just, again, pegs to allow for support of the piece. I think this is a really good solution. If you have space after you've put the screws into place, I recommend you then fill those gaps in with a bit more of that caulk. Chances are you'll have more than enough to finish the project. As you can see, I come in and touch up a bit with the foam board glue there. I believe it's used to insulate in like basements and things like that. You just have like bare basement walls that have a ununiform surface, like a cinder block or something like that, and you just stick it on there, and that's what they're supposed to use it for. You will find the caulk in the same section as the silicone caulk that I was using earlier, and that we're going to be adding the details on later. Again, silicone is going to be safe for our for the EVA foam that we're going to be adding as the details on top. And we're going to be sticking those on in exactly the same way we've stuck all of them on, with a bit of silicone, and adding them in with our kind of geometric-ish shapes. So we're going to be emulating a bit of carapace, and the base shapes are going to be these arrowish things, but when we layer them up, they look kind of like scales. Once we have those in place, we will start adding the little puzzle-like layers that we've added before in the various other pieces. I use the thicker foam mats for the bigger scales, and we're going to start from the top and work down as the scales get bigger at the bottom. Alright, next up we're going to be finishing all the extra pieces and going into a little bit more detail as far as paint is concerned. I hope you guys enjoy. Thanks for watching. Good times to all. Hurrah! If you like this, there's actually a more in-depth version over at finalcosmichorror.com. Check out the link in the description. Good times to all. Hurrah!